She stirred the poison into the soup with steady hands, watching the powder dissolve into nothing. In 1 hour, the heir would be dead. But the spirits were watching too, and what happened next would haunt the village for generations.
In the kingdom of Okeara, where the red clay roads wound between thick forests and the morning mist clung to the valleys like silk, there lived a boy named Chima. He was 12 years old, with eyes that seemed too old for his young face, eyes that had learned too early what it meant to lose a mother. His father, Chief Obis, was a powerful man who governed 3 villages and commanded the respect of every elder from the riverlands to the mountain peaks. But power could not protect Chima from the danger that now lived under his own roof. 6 moons had passed since his father brought home a new wife. Her name was Adaora, and she arrived from a distant village with skin like polished mahogany and a smile that never quite reached her eyes. She brought with her a daughter, Ngozi, a girl of 15 with her mother's beauty but none of her coldness. The villagers whispered that Adaora had enchanted the chief, that she had used charm and beauty to secure her place in his compound. But Chima knew the truth was simpler and somehow more terrible. His father was lonely, and Adaora was patient. From the first day, Adaora's kindness toward Chima was a performance, practiced and hollow. When the chief was present, she would touch Chima's shoulder gently, speak to him in soft tones, even serve him extra portions of food. But when they were alone, her eyes would turn to flint. She never struck him, never raised her voice. Her cruelty was quieter, more deliberate. A cold stare that lasted too long. Food served last and least. Small humiliations that left no marks but carved themselves into his heart. Chima understood why she hated him. He was the heir. When his father passed into the realm of the ancestors, everything would belong to Chima. The land, the title, the wealth accumulated over generations. Ngozi, despite being older, would receive only what her future husband's family provided. Adaora had married into power, but her own blood would never inherit it. That knowledge burned in her like a coal that would not go cold. The morning it all changed began like any other. The roosters called out across the compound as the sun broke over the hills, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. Chima woke on his sleeping mat and prepared for the day's lessons. His father had hired a teacher from the mission school, a learned man who taught him numbers and letters alongside the traditional wisdom of their people. He was washing his face in the clay basin when he heard his father's voice, tight with urgency. Chief Obis was leaving for the coastal villages. A dispute over fishing rights had escalated, and his presence was required to prevent bloodshed. He would be gone for 3 days, maybe 4. Chima felt his stomach tighten as he watched his father's entourage prepare horses and provisions. His father placed a heavy hand on his shoulder. "You are the man of this house while I am away. Protect your family. Honor your mother's memory." Chima nodded, not trusting his voice. He watched until the dust from the horses faded into the distance, and then he turned back toward the compound where Adaora stood in the doorway, watching him with an expression he could not read. That first day passed quietly. Adaora kept to herself, and Chima focused on his studies. But he could feel something shifting in the air, the way animals sense a storm before the first clouds appear. That night, he barely slept, listening to the sounds of the compound, the distant calls of night birds, the whisper of wind through the palm fronds. The second day, Adaora became strangely attentive. She asked about his lessons, commented on how much he had grown, even smiled at him across the courtyard. It was so unlike her that Chima felt his wariness deepen. He had learned to trust his instincts, and every instinct now screamed that something was wrong. On the 3rd day, Adaora announced she would prepare a special meal for him. A celebration of his father's safe journey, she said. She would make his favorite soup, the rich Ngozi his mother used to prepare, flavored with bitter leaf and stockfish, served over pounded yam. Chima's heart ached at the mention of it. He had not tasted that soup since his mother died. He found Ngozi in the garden that afternoon, tending to the pepper plants. She looked up as he approached, her face troubled. "You should not eat the soup," she said quietly, her eyes darting toward the kitchen where her mother worked. "Why not?" Ngozi's hands trembled as she touched the leaves. "I saw her in the forest yesterday. At the house of the medicine woman who lives beyond the grove. The one they say deals in dark things." "What are you telling me?" "I am telling you to be careful, Chima. I am telling you that my mother wants things she can never have unless—" She could not finish, but she did not need to. Chima felt ice spread through his veins. "You think she would poison me?" "I think she wants your inheritance more than she wants her soul." Ngozi's voice broke. "I think she has wanted it from the day she married your father. And I think 3 days alone with you is an opportunity she will not waste. Do you think he will eat the soup?" Chima returned to his room, his mind racing. He could refuse the meal, claim illness, throw the food away. But if Adaora truly meant him harm, refusing would only delay the inevitable. She would try again, and next time he might not have warning. He needed proof. He needed witnesses. But more than that, he needed protection. There was a shrine at the edge of the compound, a small structure of clay and wood where his mother used to make offerings to the ancestors. Since her death, it had fallen into neglect, the offerings long since rotted away. But Chima remembered the prayers she had taught him. The words she said would call on those who had gone before to watch over those who remained. As the sun began its descent, painting the sky in shades of blood orange and deep purple, Chima knelt before the shrine. He cleared away the dead leaves and debris, placed fresh palm fronds at the base, and lit a small fire in the offering bowl. From his pocket, he drew out a handful of kola nuts, precious and rare, that he had been saving for a special occasion. He placed them beside the flame. "Ancestors, hear me. Grandmother, mother, all who came before and watch over me still, I ask for your protection. There is one who wishes me harm under my own roof. If her intentions are evil, reveal them. If poison touches my lips, turn it back to its source. I am alone here, but I trust when I'm not unguarded." The fire flickered and danced, and for a moment, Chima felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the flames. A presence, gentle and fierce at once, seemed to settle over the shrine like an invisible blanket. The air grew thick with the scent of flowers, his mother's favorite, though none grew nearby. He stayed there until the sun disappeared completely and the first stars emerged. When he returned to the main house, Adaora was waiting. The compound was lit with oil lamps that cast dancing shadows on the walls. She had set the table with care, using the fine bowls reserved for important guests. 2 bowls of soup sat steaming, the rich aroma filling the room. One was placed at his usual spot. The other sat across from it. "I thought we could eat together," Adaora said, her voice warm. "It has been so long since we shared a proper meal, just the 2 of us. Your father would want us to be family." Ngozi stood in the doorway, her face pale, her eyes locked on the bowl in front of Chima's seat. The message in her gaze was clear, "That is the one." Chima sat down slowly. His heart hammered against his ribs, but he kept his face calm. Adaora sat across from him, her own bowl before her. She smiled and lifted her spoon. "Eat, Chima. I made it just as your mother did. I know how much you miss her cooking." The mention of his mother from this woman's lips made his jaw tighten, but he said nothing. He looked down at the soup. It appeared perfect, the oil glistening on the surface, the meat tender and plentiful. If poison hid in those depths, it left no trace he could see. He picked up his spoon. Adaora watched him with eyes that glittered in the lamplight. Behind her, through the window, Chima could see the shrine, the small fire still burning. He thought of his mother's hands preparing this very soup, her laughter as she taught him which leaves to pick, her voice singing the old songs. He lowered his spoon toward the soup. And then the impossible happened. A wind rose from nowhere, sweeping through the room with such force that the lamps guttered and swayed. The windows banged open, and the air filled with the sound of rushing wings, though no birds could be seen. Adaora gasped and reached for her bowl to steady it. But the bowls moved. Not from the wind. Not from any natural force. They slid across the table as if pulled by invisible hands, smooth and deliberate, swapping positions in the space of a heartbeat. Chima's bowl moved to where Adaora's had sat. Adaora's bowl settled in front of Chima. The wind died as suddenly as it had come. The lamp steadied. Silence fell like a stone into deep water. Adaora stared at the bowl now in front of her, and Chima watched all the color drain from her face. Her hand, still holding the spoon, began to shake. Her eyes darted from the bowl to Chima to the window to the bowl again, and in them, he saw the terrible realization of what had just occurred. "The ancestors," she whispered, her voice thin and broken. "They moved them. They know." Chima said nothing. His hand was steady now as he picked up his spoon from the bowl that had been Adaora's, the safe bowl, and took a sip. The soup was delicious, perfect, untainted. He savored it while Adaora sat frozen, staring at the bowl of poison she had prepared for him now sitting before her own place. "Eat, Adaora," Chima said softly. "You went to such trouble to prepare this meal. It would be a shame to waste it." I am not hungry." "No." Chima took another spoonful. "Strange. You were so insistent just moments ago. You said Father would want us to be family. Is this not what family does? Share meals together?" Sweat beaded on Adaora's forehead. Her breathing came quick and shallow. She pushed back from the table, the chair scraping loudly against the floor. "I made a mistake. The soup, it may have spoiled. We should not eat it. Either of us. Mine tastes fine." Chima met her eyes across the table. "But perhaps yours is different." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Adaora's mask had crumbled completely. Gone was the careful smile, the practiced warmth. What remained was raw fear and something worse, the knowledge of being caught not by human eyes but by forces beyond her control or comprehension. Ngozi had entered the room during the wind's chaos. She stood now against the wall, tears streaming down her face, staring at her mother with a mix of horror and heartbreak. "Mother, what have you done?" Adaora turned to her daughter, and for a moment, something like shame flickered across her features. But it was quickly replaced by desperation. "I did it for us. For you. So you could have what you deserve." "I deserve a mother who is not a murderer," Ngozi said, her voice breaking. "I deserve to sleep at night without wondering if you will bring a curse upon our heads." The word curse seemed to strike Adaora like a physical blow. She looked around the room wildly, as if seeing spirits in every shadow. Perhaps she was. "They will not let me leave, will they?" she asked, though it was unclear who she was asking. "The ancestors. They will demand justice." "Justice will come," said a new voice from the doorway. they all turned to see 3 elders of the village standing at the entrance. The eldest, a man named Okeara whose white hair seemed to glow in the lamplight, stepped forward. His face was grave. "We were coming to pay our respects to the chief's household when we saw the wind rise from this house alone, while all else was still. We saw the fire at the shrine burn bright as day. And we heard the voices." Voices? Adaora's whisper was barely audible. "The ancestors are not silent when great wrong is attempted in their presence," Okeara said. "They showed us what transpired here. The poison in the bowl. The switching. The mercy they showed this boy and the judgment they passed on you." Another elder, a woman named Obiagili, moved to the table. She looked down at the bowl in front of Adaora with knowing eyes. "The medicine woman beyond the grove has already confessed. She came to us an hour ago, terrified, saying the spirits visited her and commanded she reveal what poison she sold and to whom. She described you perfectly, Adaora. She told us of the powder meant to stop a heart while leaving no trace. Which side will the spirits favor?" Adaora collapsed to her knees. The sound that came from her was animal-like, a keening wail of despair. She knew she was finished. In this village, in any village, to attempt to poison a chief's heir was a crime beyond redemption. The spirits had witnessed it. The elders knew. There could be no talking her way free, no smile or charm to save her now. "Please," she sobbed, reaching toward Chima. "Please, I was not thinking clearly. I would never have gone through with it. I was angry. I was afraid. Please." Chima looked down at her, this woman who had made his life a quiet misery, who had plotted his death while sharing his home. He felt many things: anger, betrayal, a painful vindication. But beneath it all was something unexpected. Pity. "You were afraid," he said quietly. "Afraid that you would have nothing. But you never understood. My father would have cared for you and Ngozi for life. You would have wanted for nothing. Your fear created the very destruction you hoped to avoid." Elder Okeara placed a hand on Chima's shoulder. "Wise words from one so young. You have your mother's heart." The elders took Adaora into custody. She would be held until Chief Obi's return to pass judgment. As they led her away, still weeping, Ngozi approached Chima. "I am sorry," she said, her voice small. "For what she tried to do. For not speaking sooner." "You warned me when it mattered," Chima said. "That took courage." "What will happen to me?" Ngozi asked. "When they banish her, will I be cast out too?" Chima thought of his father, of his mother, of the lessons they had taught him about justice and mercy, about responsibility and compassion. "That will be for my father to decide. But I will speak for you. You are not responsible for your mother's darkness. If you wish to stay, I will ask him to let you." Ngozi's eyes filled with fresh tears, but these were different. "Thank you," she whispered. That night, after the elders had gone and the compound had settled into an uneasy quiet, Chima returned to the shrine. The fire had burned down to embers, but the air still held that thickness, that sense of presence. He knelt and bowed his head. "Thank you," he said simply. "For seeing. For acting. For protecting me when I had no other protection." The embers flared briefly, casting warm light across his face. And in that moment, he could have sworn he felt a hand on his head, gentle and familiar, the way his mother used to touch him before sleep. The scent of flowers bloomed strong and sweet. He was not alone. He had never been alone. Chief Obi's returned 2 days later. The messenger had ridden hard to reach him with news of what had transpired. He entered the compound like a storm, his face terrible with rage and pain. To learn that the woman he had brought into his home, given his trust and his name, had tried to murder his son was a betrayal that cut to his core. The trial was held in the village square, under the great Irako tree where matters of justice had been decided for generations. The entire village gathered. Adaora was brought forward, her hands bound, her face swollen from crying. The medicine woman testified to selling her the poison. Ngozi testified through tears about her mother's trip to the forest. The elders testified about the spirit's intervention, about the bulls swapping before their eyes. And Chima testified simply and clearly about the prayers he had said, the soup he had been served, and the wind that had risen to save his life. Chief Obis listened to it all with a face of stone. When the testimonies were finished, he stood. The square fell silent. Adaora, daughter of the East villages, you came into my house as a wife and a mother. I gave you my name, my protection, and my trust. In return, you plotted to kill my son, my heir, my blood. This is not merely a crime against my family. It is a crime against our ancestors, who intervened to stop you. It is a crime against the natural order of things. He paused, and his voice grew harder. By the laws of our people and the judgment of the spirits themselves, I banish you. You will leave these lands within the day. You will take nothing that belongs to this house. You will never return. If you set foot in any of my villages again, the penalty will be death. This is my judgment. Adaora did not protest. She had no ground to stand on, no defense to offer. She bowed her head in acceptance of her fate. But then Chief Obis turned to Ngozi, who stood apart from her mother, shaking with fear and sorrow. Ngozi, daughter of Adaora. You are young. You warned my son of danger when you could have stayed silent. You showed loyalty to truth over loyalty to blood. For this, if you wish it, you may remain in my household. You will be as a daughter to me, as a sister to Chima. I will provide for your bride price when the time comes. Your mother's crimes are not yours to carry. Ngozi fell to her knees, overcome. Thank you, my chief. Thank you. Adaora was escorted to the edge of the village that afternoon. Chima watched from a distance as she walked the red clay road, alone, carrying only the clothes on her back. He felt no satisfaction in her downfall, only a quiet sadness for the waste of it all. She had reached for power through poison and lost everything. The spirits had simply returned her evil to its source. In the days and weeks that followed, life in the compound slowly returned to normal, though it was a different normal than before. Ngozi became a true sister to Chima, their bond forged in the fire of that terrible night. She helped him tend to the ancestral shrine, which they restored to beauty, making offerings regularly to honor those who had intervened. The story of the poisoned bull spread throughout the region. It was told in markets and at gatherings, shared between villages as a testament to the watchfulness of the ancestors and the inevitable justice that comes to those who plot evil. Some said that on certain nights, you could still smell flowers around the shrine in Chief Obi's compound, a sign that Chima's mother watched over her son still. As for the medicine woman who had sold the poison, she gave up her dark practices and devoted herself to healing only, terrified into righteousness by the spirit's visit. She would tell anyone who asked that the ancestors were real, that they were watching, and that no evil could be hidden from their sight. Chima grew into a young man of wisdom and compassion, known throughout the land for his fairness. He never forgot the lesson of that night, that evil turned back upon itself, that the spirits favored the innocent, and that the greatest power was not in taking what belonged to another but in honoring what was rightfully yours. The moral of this story is ancient but ever new: evil sown returns to the sower. The ancestors watch over the innocent, and justice, though it may come in unexpected ways, always finds its mark. Poison meant for another's cup has a way of finding its way back to the hand that poured it. And those who trust in righteousness will find protection even in the darkest hour, for they are never truly alone. Years later, when Chima became chief in his father's place, he kept the bowl from that night. Not the poisoned one, which had been destroyed, but the safe one, the one the spirits had moved to save him. He kept it as a reminder that power means nothing without honor, that wealth is worthless without integrity, and that the watchful eyes of the ancestors are the greatest inheritance any person can claim. And in his compound, the shrine burned bright every evening, tended with love and gratitude, a beacon reminding all who saw it that the line between the living and the dead is thinner than we think, and that justice, true justice, answers to a higher power than any earthly court. The story of Adaora became a cautionary tale told to children across the region. Mothers would say to daughters who envied what others had, "Remember the woman who tried to poison the air. See where greed and envy lead." Fathers would say to sons tempted to take shortcuts to power, "Remember how the spirits swapped the bowls." You cannot hide evil from those who watch from beyond. And in every telling, the lesson remained clear: the universe has a way of balancing itself, of turning evil back to its source, of protecting the innocent when they call upon the guardians who came before. The spirits are watching. Justice is patient. And truth, no matter how long it takes, will always come to light. If this story has moved you, if it has reminded you that justice still exists in this world, even when we cannot see it working, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to keep these ancient lessons alive, to remember that the wisdom of our ancestors still speaks to us today, if only we have ears to listen. Another tale of spirits and justice awaits, another lesson from the old ways that still rings true in our modern world. The ancestors have many more stories to tell, and they are waiting for those willing to hear.